feel the juice. Make me an offer that I can't refuse. Blow my fuse. Got nothing to lose. Blow my fuse. I need a good shot. I can't give it to you on electric cruise. Blow my fuse. You light my light, I light you. Baby, shake my
Welcome to the prime time stage. Please direct your attention to our next WGU panel session.
feel my power. 50,000 watts. Come on, feel the voltage.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here today, whether you're in person or online in beautiful, sunny San Diego. We're here for AI in EdTech, tool, transformation, or trouble. So you have all, it's a really pithy title. You've all been here for the wave of AI the last 2 years, and we've seen a lot of different implementations across the spectrum. On one side, it feels like bolt-on features that are hanging off the sides of these products, to LLM wrappers that don't feel that differentiated from Claude or ChatGPT and what you can get directly by going to those tools. But on the other side of that spectrum, we see some really meaningful AI experiences coming together, represented by some of the folks that are on stage today. And I think you're in for a treat, because we've got a broad spectrum. We're going to go all the way from kindergarten to higher ed, with B2C, direct to teacher and student. And we've got B2B, folks that are building frameworks and systems for ed tech providers. And you all have established products that are pretty significant in the market, and you are not building AI for AI's sake. Congratulations. It's a big deal. So Peter, I want to start with you, and what makes AI the right fit for solving a product problem versus a more traditional approach, and how is that showing up in your product, Quill?
Well, thank you for hosting this panel. Really excited to share our insights. Quill is a nonprofit that helps students improve their writing skills. And we see that writing is a really difficult skill. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of feedback to become a better writer, and that a lot of students just don't get those opportunities to write and get enough feedback. And so AI can do an amazing job of evaluating writing. We're seeing that with generative AI, over the last year, its ability to analyze and provide feedback, it's amazing how much better and faster and more effective it's become. But the question is, how do you do it with really good reliability and really strong safety and trust? As a nonprofit, we've been serving millions of students, and we've been building our own AI since 2018, and thinking really deeply about how to do this work in a way that's ethical and that really supports student learning. And so in the course of the panel, we'll get into more of these details, but as a student-facing tool, we have this big responsibility to make sure that our work is really reliable, it's giving fair and equitable analysis of student work, and doing that work requires a lot of time spent in R&D, a lot of time building data sets, a lot of time evaluating AI. These things are all very doable. You can get the staffing, you can build the infrastructure, and when you have all that in place, you can do really good work. But if you don't have that, there's a real risk of not giving students an effective learning experience. All the folks on this panel all have products that reach millions of kids, either directly or through teachers or partners. And so we have this really serious responsibility of getting it right. And so excited to learn more from you all as well about how you grapple with this.
Jay, how are you grappling with it at BrainPop? Because you have to go K through 8, which is on the younger side of the spectrum.
Yeah, I would say our journey for AI has been really starting, the bar that we have is very high. So BrainPop is a enduring 25-year-old brand that has engaged kids for the last 25 years. And the thing that we do really well is we help make, through our animations and videos and storytelling, we help make emotional connections for kids to important ideas. And because we are on the younger stage of the spectrum, we really have to think about anything that we put in front of kids has to be right, has to be appropriate. And so the first thing we did is we said, what are we really good at? We're really good at animation and storytelling. So our journey with AI started by creating a movie. We have some of the best script writers and animators and storytellers in the business. And so we started with a topic around AI literacy that was well-researched, and all of you should go to BrainPop and search up BrainPop Artificial Intelligence. Even me, as someone who's been in the industry for a long time, I even learned some things. And so we're starting really with media literacy, digital literacy, and now AI literacy, particularly with AI bombarding our kids. We don't want it to be the next social media issue where there's so many harms from social media. We want to start by being very responsible out of the gate. But in addition to that, we're looking at AI in 3 different ways. One is helping us make our content creation more efficient. So giving tools to our creatives, our learning designers to make them better and faster. And we also have some production AI where we've created for our science product a science auto-grading tool for scientific writing. Because now with science teachers in middle school, they're being in the science curriculum, they're being asked to show evidence of kids demonstrating hypothesis generation, claim evidence, and reasoning, and that involves scientific writing. And if you know any science teachers, they probably got into science because they didn't want to do writing. And so we've given them something special by using AI to help auto-grade essays and scientific writing. So that's what we've done so far, and we're starting to look at student-facing AI, direct-to-student-facing AI, but one of the challenges we have is that when you put something in front of a 3rd grader, it can't hallucinate, it has to be private, and it can't be wrong. And so we are spending a lot of time in iterating on that to make sure it's safe for kids.
Thanks, Jay. Jing, what about at Metametrics?
So first, thanks for having me here. So Metametrics is the company that created Lexile framework for reading. So I imagine a lot of you probably heard or used Lexile, but I bet not all of you probably know that Lexile was created using machine learning techniques, or AI, more than 40 years ago. So back then, AI was not the shiny new object. And as a ML nerd, sometimes I would actually shy away from using the term AI because it sounds a little bit too commercial. So we created Lexile because we want to solve a problem, and that is a literacy problem. And we believe that we can grow students' reading skills, not just by making them reading more or spending more time reading, but rather reading the right content. So that's why we created the Lexile framework for reading that can help us match students to the right content. And we call that a framework or a scale because it has 2 sides to it. One side is the text side. So we created a large corpus of millions of text, and then we used natural language processing techniques to extract textual features. And then we use machine learning techniques to build a readability model to predict how difficult those texts are. And then on the other side, on the student side, we created a large item bank that are standards aligned, cognitively and grade level appropriate for K to 12. So that for any students, we can just draw content from our item bank, creating a reading assessment, measure their reading abilities, and based on their scores, match back to the content. So 40 years later, 35 million students, that is about 60% of the school-age children in the United States, are receiving Lexile measures on their score report. So what this helps is they can take their Lexile measures, come to our website, use our freely available tool called Find a Book, enter their Lexile measures, and find a book that is just at the right level. Not too difficult, not too easy, but optimal for their reading growth. So that's what we do. So I guess, now in the past 5 or 10 years, there has been like an AI bloom or AI buzz. So as a technology company, we are open-minded to all of the amazing advancement in the technology space. And we have the bandwidth and also the intellectual curiosity to try everything. But at the same time, we can't be a little bit concerned or worried because we are an education company as well. We want to be extra cautious in terms of what we are selecting, what LLMs, what we are using. Because ultimately, we are trying to solve an education problem. We are not just trying to build AI for AI's sake.
Thanks, Jing. David, talk to us about what's going on at Western Governors University in higher ed.
Thank you, Kristen. I'll tell you this. At WGU, we're focused. We have 3 main key results that we're often, not often, all the time focused on. The first one is attainment. We want our students to attain the credential they are looking for. The second one is return. We want them to receive the return of their investment as soon as possible. And the third one is we want to bring the opportunity to everyone because we believe in the inherent worth of every individual and their ability to learn. We want to bring them to everyone. That equity is important for us, equity of opportunity. So everything that we do for our student has to do with the entire experience of that student as they come into us. So we have right now over 76 different initiatives that are consuming AI, either some of the models that were created by us internally or some of the models that were created by third-party companies, like the companies we have on stage today, that we're testing and validating and making sure that they can support our objectives for our students. We believe firmly that we need to learn as much as we can about our students, such that we can truly offer personalized services, but also personalized learning at a personalized timing frame or time. So we're focused right now on how do we enable our students as they come in to really align based on affinity, based on what we know of them from their transcripts, from the LinkedIn, from their resumes, from whatever point we can get information of our students, such that we can show the different programs that they may have some affinity, along with, oh, by the way, your zip code, there's this many jobs for this specific program, for that specific program. Oh, and by the way, this is how long it would take if you continue the trajectory that you have shown in the past. We're trying to give them the data for them to make the right decisions at the right time. The main one that I would highlight of projects or initiatives that we have going on is we are working on a decision intelligent framework that is sitting across the entire experience from discovering which program to go into or what certificates to attain, to the learning process, to graduation, to coming back to get more learnings. This decision support intelligence that we're building is such that it's very unique to the student based on a persistent progressive profile of what we learned from this student. As you can imagine, when you serve students, there's always path of service. Well, if this student is having this issue, well, maybe we can solve it with this, or with this, right? There's always a binary tree across everything that we do for our students to support them. Imagine if that binary tree could mutate based on what I know of that student, such that this assistant is just within the time frame and with the personalization level that that student requires. If I know that my student is in Texas and I know they are coming from this specific zip code, I already know and understand a little bit more about the background of what is happening. Maybe there's a weather concern going on. Maybe there's whatever it may be, a very unique cultural component. I'm from El Paso, Texas, so I can tell you about all the cultural components in El Paso, Texas. So how do we enable that information to serve better that individual, to truly implement services and learning mechanisms for them, not for a standard consumption of education?
That's awesome. So one thing that all these folks have in common across this conversation is they're starting with a user problem. I don't know if you noticed that. And sometimes in the hype of a new technology, we let that cloud our judgment and how we approach it, and that's how you get to a bolt-on feature set. Starting with the user problem, what are you making better in their life and why is a really grounding mechanism in any good product development toolkit. Because you guys have this user base that expects high quality, rigor, they trust you, can we get deeper into the details of how you're actually building AI more ethically? And this goes out to all of you. So Jay, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so we've gone through this journey with our science product. So we knew the user problem was that science teachers don't want to grade writing. And writing is now becoming a standard that they're required to see in their students. And so when we launched our science product, we really said that pinpoint problem to solve to help ease the burden of grading writing was the one where we saw a perfect application of AI. But then to ensure that it was responsible, there's sort of two parts to it. One is before you launch, how do you make sure the AI is accurate and correct and meaningful for the teacher? And then afterward, once it's in production, how do you make sure the quality of what it's delivering is of the standards that we would expect? So on the front end, what we actually brought in our experts and hired dozens of more teachers, and we actually had them manually score thousands of outputs to train the AI with a ground truth level of data to make sure that the general LLM was grounded with the context of our rubric and our definition of quality output. But then when you look at it when it's out in production, we still have a teacher gating the feedback before it goes to the students. So we still have an expert with the teacher being that quality control gate, right? And so the teacher will get suggested grading, suggested feedback, and before the student ever sees it, they make the decision, they can edit, and they can send it to the kid. One of the things that we're close to working with CZI on is this idea of evaluators. And when you think about it from a tech standpoint, once you put software out in production, there's still going to be bugs. We kind of look at the same way with the use of AI and LLMs. There's still going to be bugs, but then it's about how you monitor the AI while it's in production, how you make sure that you're getting in front of it before a customer gets in front of it. And so I almost think of it like a Datadog or any of these other sort of monitoring services that we use in software. And CZI is pioneering this public good of the evaluators. And we can see application both before we launch and after we launch to almost create a sort of a Datadog monitoring service around AI. And we're really excited to be working with you on that.
And I wanted to jump in on that point.
Yeah.
So with Quill, we give feedback to students on around 500 million sentences each school year, and it goes directly to the student. We don't go to the teacher. The student is working on Quill, they're writing, they're receiving feedback, and that's a really tough challenge of when you go to that next step, right, of giving the student direct feedback and you don't have that teacher reviewing it, how do you ensure that it's working really well? And the trick with Quill is building our own data sets. And so if I could leave one thing with all of you today, whether you're building AI or evaluating AI, it's asking that developer, how do you use your own data to customize the LLM? So at Quill, for example, we collect hundreds of examples of authentic student writing, and then we have a team of teachers that write our own feedback. So exactly how that teacher is in the classroom and that teacher is giving feedback to the student, we have our team of teachers doing this at scale, and that allows us to ensure that when those kids are getting that direct feedback and there isn't a teacher reviewing it before it's going to the student, right? There's a 1-second response time between the writing and the feedback. We know we have good accuracy because we've built those data sets in advance. And I think that's a really powerful thing. These large language models, you can send them like up to 1 million words of context now. When we were here last year, that wasn't true, right? There's been a huge revolution in the amount of context you can provide to AI. I think that with the new Llama model, it's now like 10 million words. Oh, no, every few months, there's a huge jump forward here. And so I say that to say that this is a real superpower, that we can customize AI with our own data, and that really makes it our own. It allows us to say, this is what we think about writing, this is what good feedback looks like, this is good evaluation, and Quill controls it. And so I think that's sort of the secret sauce to this work and can allow us to do this work really well and do it at scale in a way that previously was too high risk and not reliable enough to really put in front of students in an earnest way.
We got a lot to learn from you.
If I could offer two different perspectives from what we are doing and how we're implementing it, and perhaps this could help a lot of you, as we do have a applied machine learning team that is focused on actually building our own models and doing all that. But we also have a lot of companies that are coming with their own products, helping us implement them. So our first step every single time that we are going to bring AI to the table to serve our students is define the outcomes, not the outputs. Define where the outcomes that you're looking for are, and make sure that you create an operational process that enables you to track, to measure, and to align to those outputs such that the outcomes are correct. So if you truly care about building this ethically, you need to make sure that the outcomes are impacting positively that group of individuals you're applying this, whatever machine learning or whatever natural language processing or whatever AI you're bringing to the table is going to look like. And you cannot rest. You cannot wait until like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen. No, you got to stay on top of that, because it can go left lane. But what I'll say another thing really quick is the second thing that is extremely valuable, it will be the transparency of what you're doing with the data. Make sure, in our case, make sure that your students know what data you have and what data you're using to serve them better. Let them see that. Let them take pieces out of that data if they want to ensure that they trust your models. That's going to be fundamental for your success, or at least that's what we're seeing, for our students to trust the mechanisms that we're putting in place.
Can you give us an example of an output versus an outcome and how you run that through your system? I find that a lot of folks confuse the two.
Yes. So an output could be, I am going to collect information for a student that is going to tell them what is the best program that they can register it into based on what I know of them. That's an output. It's going to be A or B or C or D. But if I'm saying that A is the best, now I need to track the outcome. Are they actually selecting that one, number one? Are they actually being better because they selected A? Yes, I can say I gave A, B, and C, and yeah, hooray, I did it. But is really A the right answer for that student? That's the outcome. Is it really, after this student took this, are they attaining at a higher rate because they follow our advice? Are they being successful faster because they follow our advice? Versus the outcome of my process was to show the list of projects, or programs that they can register it in. But now let's see if that actually makes sense for that student. Was that really moving the needle for social mobility, for financial stability? Was that really moving the needle at attainment? Were they able to attain at a faster rate? So that's a big difference between outcomes and outputs.
Really helpful. And I noticed so far that you're all really, really focused on the data that you're putting in and what's coming out as a result. And there's a technical specificity there that's really grounded in your educational context, because you're really focused on trying to provide value. And I love, David, that you're saying you're exposing pretty transparently what you're doing with the data to the student so they know what's going into this. Jing, I want your perspective on how do you at Metametrics showed that you're maintaining trust without overpromising on AI. What techniques have you all used to do some similar things?
That's a really great question. I think we did that through 3 different ways. So the first way is we are really educator focused. So we do not just release a Lexile measure and let users figure it out. We actually have our customer support team that would go to our state partners, our ed partners, and conduct like day-long teacher training, explaining to them what Lexile is, what it does, and most importantly, what it does not do. Because we think that's really important to ensure that our users can use Lexile in the right way. And we also created like online training program called Educator Academy, where any of our partner educators can come to our website and took a training course. It's called Lexile 101, but as somebody who is from machine learning education background, I would say it's more than a kind of product explanation. It's actually a 101 introduction to machine learning, learning theory, education theory, compacted in a learning course, explained in a way that educators can understand. So that's the first way. The second way is transparency. I kind of heard my fellow panelists have mentioned a lot about that. So our psychometricians, machine learning engineers go to conferences every year, like ARA, NCME, et cetera, publishing our results, sharing what we learned from our own experience. We don't keep our secret sauce because we believe that only by being transparent and open to share our secret sauce, we can actually out-innovate ourselves. So that's the second. The third is to maintain a really high quality standards, because to make your users trust you, you kind of have to anticipate what questions they are going to ask, how they would like to challenge you, so that you can actually maintain your quality standards higher than their expectations. So that's why for every piece of content that has gone through our content measurement, we actually have a dedicated team that would actually check all of the content before a Lexile measure is released. And then for student Lexiles, it's actually built on linking function that our psychometricians rigorously follow, like psychometric method of conducting linking studies. So we can stand behind our high quality standards.
That's awesome. I love that you're putting a very expert human in the loop to make sure that the quality is there. I want to pivot a little bit and talk about validation. We've all been in education for a long time, and we talk a lot about impact. And historically, one of the ways that we've measured impact is by doing these long 1 to 3 year efficacy studies. And we've got this new technology. We're figuring out how to build with it. But how do we know that what we're building with it is good? How are you all thinking about that?
So I can share what we do at Quill. We've done those RCTs, and they are great, but they take 2 to 3 years. By the time you get the results, your product is way past that point, especially with AI work. You know, our AI work 3 years ago is completely different from what it looks like today. I think a new idea that's really exciting to us is rapid cycle evaluation. And the core to this idea is similar to the world of biotech and pharmaceutical. You have multiple phases of research. You don't do your phase 3 trial when you have a new drug. You start with a phase 1 trial, which is much smaller, it's much quicker, and in that context, it's do no harm. Like, does this thing work? Is it helping, or is it hurting? Before you're even trying to understand, like, is this the right drug for this particular cure? And in education, you could imagine having an AI system engaging with students and just looking at, is this helping or is this harming? LLMs sometimes go off the rails. They sometimes say weird things. They sometimes repeat themselves, and they get stuck in a feedback loop. There's like a lot of ways that you have to account for these sort of technology, which is incredibly powerful, but it's also unpredictable. And so doing these phase 1 trials, you can really see, is this working, is it not working, and learn from that. And if it is giving good feedback, if it is helping the student, that's great. But if it's, say, just telling the student the answer, you know that's not effective, right? You know that if the student isn't having to derive the answer themselves, you're not actually helping that student. And so I think that sort of mindset of how do we quickly evaluate AI unlocks the ability to do really meaningful work, but getting caught in that sort of paradigm of big RCTs doesn't work for this world and sort of the rate of acceleration and change that we're seeing today.
Can you say a little bit more, because I've heard you say that you need good opinions of what good learning looks like, and how does that fit into this rapid cycle that you all are doing?
So one big missing need in this space is more public benchmark data. That as we think about things, so Quill is all about writing, but it's all about feedback, right? We're giving feedback on 500 million sentences per year. So we ask ourselves constantly, what does really good feedback and coaching look like? How do you coach a student, all right? Some teachers love a Socratic method, for example, and other teachers prefer a much more blunt and direct approach to giving feedback to their kids. And so as we think about this, there is no data set out there of like how do educators give feedback. It just doesn't exist. We've spent a lot of time looking for it. And so you could imagine how for building these data sets of how do you coach kids in math, how do you help kids with career advice, how do you help kids with writing, building these data sets will allow us to very quickly understand what is the messiness of the real world, how do educators really support and engage their students, and then that for us gives us a jumping off point to look at AI and how AI could help. And so that's just a really big missing need in this space, but one that I think we're seeing by this time next year. We'll come back, and I'm hoping that we'll see some data sets that we can talk about in 2026.
Yeah. Just to add to that, I think the way we think about it, it's not about AI itself. We see AI as an ingredient to powering a larger experience, right? And that experience is how, with BrainPop, is how do we engage a variable set of learners in a classroom to get them ready to learn? And so we give them a consistent set of background knowledge that lets them be ready to do their lesson in the core curriculum. And so AI is a booster, but it's not the end goal, or it's not the thing that we're trying to validate. And so we have several layers. So at the most basic layer, we are trusting the teacher, and we're looking at usage. And if we see more teachers using us weekly, we are trusting them to say that they're finding it useful, it's working for them in the context of their kids, because classrooms and kids are highly heterogeneous across the country. And so we start with that, and we're looking at weekly usage and increasing weekly usage around the things that we've AI enabled. On top of that, we work with schools and districts to do case studies where we drop into classrooms and do classroom observations, because a lot of this stuff is changing very rapidly. So it's really important that we stay close to the classrooms we serve. And then we'll do the one-year efficacy studies against MAP benchmarks and against state assessments, because in K-12, it's about districts are measured by how are they progressing their kids toward those state assessments. So that's always the benchmark, but those are the ones that take a long time. So we have multiple layers to be watching if this is working. But you know what's super interesting with AI is it's changing so rapidly. Like something that couldn't be counted on for quality like yesterday is now generating like 10 times better quality today. So, you know, the foundation is changing, and so it's all about being close in the classroom and watching how it works.
So I would like to piggyback on that, and thanks so much for that. And I'm going to take a nerdy spin on it, since I'm probably the nerd on the panel anyway. So in machine learning, if you understand the 101, the classical way of evaluating how well your model is performing is by collecting a data set, and then you split it into train, test, validation, etc. So you would train your model, doing your hyperparameter tuning, and then test it out on the unseen data. So that's the classical way of evaluating how well your AI is working. But at Metrics, we would like to challenge that view, because we think it's not enough just to look at accuracy, especially the accuracy of model in isolation at one point in time. Rather, we would like to draw inspiration from our neighboring field, which is educational assessment, and drawing on evidence-centered design, assessment use argument, thinking about, what is the problem that we want to solve with AI, and then collect validity evidence to support the use we want to make of AI. So this would include different layers, not just accuracy, but also reliability, right? How consistent it is working, does the model drift over time, et cetera, and also impact, right? So how it is actually being used in the classrooms, what is the impact on student learning, and practicality. I mean, my fellow panelists are all executives, so ROI, et cetera, do we have the resource to actually make the changes we want to make? So at Metametrics, we are kind of proposing, by only taking that holistic view about validating AI, we can really make AI to serve our purpose, to solve our problems, not the other way around.
And I can put some numbers on that for Quill, because we see the same thing where we do lots of, we measure our accuracy, precision, recall, but in the classroom it looks different.
Yeah.
Real data is always messier than your model's data. And so for Quill, we have a team of 7 former educators, and they review around 100,000 sentences per year manually. And so I say that to say that everyone here is talking about human in the loop, right? You're not going to find anybody at this conference who won't say there's some human in the loop in some way. And the question to ask isn't, is there a human in the loop? It's how many humans are in the loop? How many people are doing that work? How much evaluation are they doing? How many sessions are they looking at? And I think that's the difference here, that if you have those teams and you're doing that evaluation well, then you can have really good reliability. But if you're just looking at, say, a couple of sessions or not doing enough of that sort of like in the classroom review, there's a real risk that your sort of like hypothetical data in your own trial set doesn't reflect the real world. And I think that that's a question where there could be a more honest conversation among the cost of that. For us, this costs us like $1 million per year, which as a small nonprofit is a huge part of our budget, but it's critical towards our model being effective. And so I think that's sort of a really valuable thing for us to spend more time discussing and unpacking. Who do you hire for that role? What are those skill sets? So there's a lot to figure out and learn together as a group here to do evaluation work really well.
I just wish everything that was said is quite substantial, so I'm just going to add a little piece of something. As we think about where to consume AI, and we going back to the outcomes, not the outputs, a few minutes ago we were talking about, hey, what am I trying to solve with AI? Let it not be automating a process that must be sunsetted. Let it not be like, oh, I always do this, I'm just going to try to solve for this, I don't have to do it. No. Really figure out if that process should exist. And if it doesn't, then how is AI enabling me to remove that process such that I'm really moving the needle for the outcome that I'm looking for? I think that's to me, anyway, for us at WGU, that's really how we see that validation of that model.
I love the intentionality there. Remember your outcome. I'm also excited by the fact that feedback loops can start to look a little bit different in education and maybe get a little bit faster so that we can tune and really focus on the outcome and what we're trying to solve for kids and teachers. Rapid round, if you had to leave folks with one takeaway for how to build more meaningful products with AI, what would it be? Peter, kick us off. We'll go down the line.
Build your own data sets. You can literally just feed it right into the LLM now. It's very easy to do, but invest in evaluation. Evaluation is way harder than building your own data sets, but that makes or breaks whether you have the right data.
I would say spend time on your data structure. Make sure that you have the data set very well built. Understand that it takes time. It's not something that is going to happen from one day to the next one. And then I'm going to use a quote that I used in a previous panel from Oren Harari, who said, the electric light is not coming from the iteration or continued integration of candles. So please consider that as you're thinking about where am I going to apply AI. It's not the iteration of your current flows, your current process. What is that electric light?
All right. Since we're all talking about data, I'm going to leave a piece of advice on data as well. So it is triangulate your data, because humans have errors. So don't just trust one source of data. Collect human data from multiple sources, triangulate them, and then build your model on that high-quality triangulated data.
I think I resonate definitely with David and what you're saying in that let's imagine what's possible from a first principles point of view, that AI is now able to solve things that we never would have thought possible. I remember in 2007, I was sitting at McGraw-Hill thinking about, we were auto-grading multiple choice questions, but we couldn't auto-grade essays. Now that's possible, right? And so instead of thinking about what exists and having an operating model of what exists today, sort of start with the end in mind and then bring together this new tool set which is evolving and changing every day to think about how you solve those problems in novel and new ways.
Amazing. Well, thank you to each of you for being here, and to all of you, and that's it.
Thanks, Kristen.